Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Solstice Esports Solstice Showdown. We're playing some Overwatch today and starting this tournament off right. We've got two teams ready to go at it. We're starting off with Regen versus Dogs Noodles, bringing all the action at you. I am Dor, and I'm joined by Moxie. Moxie, how you feeling today?
Well, a little bit anxious, but not really to cast, much more to play Overwatch because I'm a main support. And Dora, if you haven't read those patch notes, there's a little bit of a doozy that came on through. And that's they ditched all of the changes to Moira, and they brought the Genji buffs in full onto live. And so every single game that I've queued into today, yesterday, the day before that, and pretty much all of this week, I've just had an insta-locked Genji on the other side with a nano boost, meaning that he rips up my front line, rips me up, and then eats my DPS for dessert.
Yeah, every map just turns into a Shimada hellscape right now, and I can't even take advantage of it. It's not fair. Mox, you've bared witness to my Genji and its lack of flair. I can't wait to see what these teams can do with it because I just haven't been able to put it to use.
But I mean, your Echo is still pretty much on point, and even though Echo had the teeniest bit of a tink, you know, that 20 meters focusing beam down to 16 meters, a little bit fairer now. That she has to be close enough that you can actually try and pick her off before she just scoops you up and puts you into the kill feed. Still very strong because the focusing beam isn't really the thing that Echo brings to the table. Yes, it does an insane amount of damage and it's very good for shield break, but Duplicate is still such an insane ability. It may be an ultimate, and I know Blizzard want their ultimates to be strong, but having 650% ultimate charge for 15 seconds, meaning that you can get shatter after shatter or even 7 pulse bombs off in a row, is just a little bit pushing it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's most of the changes here. There's a little bit of a Hanzo buff. He's become a bit more of a shield break monster with that Storm Arrow buff from, I believe it was 60 to 70. But as for team compositions as a whole, not just heroes, what can we expect to see? We're starting off on Nepal, and of course, the meta's been relatively varied. Do you think we're going to see a little bit more dive prominence given these buffs?
So, dive is in a very strange spot at the moment because it's not that traditional dive. Normally, you go for that Winston, that Diva, but a little bit more often lately, we've seen Hammond and Diva get paired up, or even just Hammond and Winston. But I think Genji coming back does mean that you're going to have that full front line dive. You're not going to have someone staying home watching the kids to make sure the backline stays up and alive, like you had a couple of weeks ago, say, where you would have someone like a Hanzo or a soldier babysitting your supports. No, now you can really commit to having the entire team just go straight in for the throat. And I'm not going to be surprised if we see a Lucio Brig or even that Brig Zen combination coming out, because that dive, while very aggressive, means that no one gets left behind. And if no one gets left behind, the enemy Genji can do jack all.
I mean, that's exactly it. Like you said, you want to be peeling for a lot of these dive teams. So there's kind of that mixed option of, do we want to fully commit to the dive or do we want to play to counter? And I think the brawl compositions offer a lot to that. Of course, one of the most recent developments that we've seen has been the prevalence of Ana Brigitte, which is insanely powerful in its own right, denies so much value from the opposing team. And you're basically just an Ana babysitter at that point, sitting on top of her, waiting for the dive to come in. But if you're playing it into dive, you shut it down so effectively. So if we do see dive, I expect the Brigitte to come out. However, double shield is still a staple here. We can't not mention it at this point.
Absolutely, because you think of Nepal and you think of all of these places where Arista can find a whole amount of value with that environmental kill, and Halt may not have been actively buffed. I think it got a slight nerf if you look at it. Having it sound off a little bit louder means that the enemy should be more prepared for when it comes through. But even if you're prepared, there's nothing really you can do about it unless you're running a composition that is centered around stopping that one ability where you've got a Sigma or you've got a Diva who can just gate it by eating it. And it's not really the value that you want in a composition, right? You want to have each of those heroes in for a reason, in for a win condition. Eating a Halt, while it's going to make your approach point easier, is not going to do anything in the long run.
Well, here as we head into Nepal, we're starting off on Sanctum, and it's kind of the choice between two. Brawl has a really hard time here because of all the environmental kill potential. So it's either going to be double shield or a dive. Which of these teams breaks out which? I think we're going to be yet to see here. We'll load up in about 5 seconds, but whether or not you run the dive, I think is going to be super critical, especially whether or not you practice on it. These buffs are relatively recent. A lot of these teams haven't had time to learn these kind of things. As we get in, that's exactly what we're going to see. They're going to load up on the double shield and therefore try to avoid a little bit of that new compositional feel that they may not be used to.
I mean, dive is risky, right? Because if you don't win that first fight, it becomes extremely hard to pull it off again and again and again. And that means that you can find yourself running up against a map where you're already 60% behind, 90% behind even. Double shielding is just a little bit softer, a little bit more reliable. And we are going to be seeing a lot of reliability coming out from both of these sides. Regen going to go for that over the Sigma, but with a Junkrat in. And so Doug's Noodles, they're trying to put the Tracer all amongst the pigeons. Chefslex might have a real hard time running into some traps and some explosions.
Yeah, the spam can be so powerful here. This is especially one of those really sleeper Junkrat map picks. Pool is going to be looking to put in a ton of damage alongside the double shields, just allowing him to hunker down and spam wherever he wants. The control point's going to unlock, but Doug's Noodles aren't really in a good position to take advantage of. Their 6 players are all completely separated. So Regen, it is just a matter of time before they manage to find something here because their shields aren't really breaking. They're not getting focused down. Ship will push to point though. This may be the wrong move. He's getting a Discord orb and take a ton of damage. Immortality Field will be keeping them alive for the time being, but that is bound to go down here in just a moment. Does take down Trev though. A massive pick on point that gains them so much precedence over the rest of this map.
Csac tried to put the Immortality Field in to save the Tracer, but I don't think he was able to slot it through the corridor. And Trevsex goes down with a 25-second cooldown attached to Csac's ability. And now if you're Regen, you're really pushing forward because you know it's not available.
I mean, Ship was so close to dying there, but barely manages to take it over. And that's going to be a huge advantage now for Regen. They've charged up a lot of ultimates.
They've charged up ultimates, and they're in control of one of the harder places to really push through. If you're Doug's Noodles, you do have Trevsex, so 70-80% to that Pulse Bomb. This is the thing that can really open it up, but there's so much that can just deny him. That Immortality Field, the Sigma Shift ability, you don't want to see your hard-earned ultimate go to waste.
I would love to see a Kinetic Grasp Pulse Bomb. That would be definitely up there on my bucket list for things Sox could do right now to just clutch it, or pardon me, Ship could do right now to clutch this out. They've got so much more to worry about between this Riptire as well as the Gridic Flux. There's just so many things that can end with loss of life for them. Lava will manage to keep themselves up at the time being. The Riptire doesn't find any value, so at least Dogs Noodles have managed to survive that long. Ship though, still on point, still a problem. This Sigma duel is a lot bigger than it seems because so much damage going down on both. Sox is the first to fall on top of that. It's gonna all crumble here for Dogs Noodles.
And the Sigma battle is even more important because Doug's Noodles, Csac, he put an amplification matrix onto the point to try to keep Sox alive on that Sigma, and the Sigma still falls. That's an ultimate gone. That's an ultimate wasted. That's an ultimate you could have used to combine with D-Drop's Bob. And instead, that's just going to be shut down now by a Transcendence. You're not going to be able to go over the barrier where Transcendence healing starts.
Yeah, it's pretty rough stuff here for Dogs Noodles. Wasting those ultimates is going to be super key. Yes, you have a Transcendence of your own, but there's just so many more ultimates on the other end of things. Regen offers up a Bob on the point to ensure just a little bit more time. Gridic Flux picks him up, throws him into LOS of the Bob. They have to trans that immediately, but they still are going to be losing members, bleeding out right now as Dewdrop goes down, Sox falls, and the tanking potential of Dogs Noodle goes with it.
And they don't have the Transcendence. They had to use it for the Sigma Flux. It's the final fight, and they've lost so many players.
I mean, it's the control point classic here. You get it that first time, and you are just bound to take some sort of value. Magic 8-Ball still has this Transcendence up and loaded. Riptire as well is just going to add insult to injury. Dewdrop falls. Regen basically have this map on lock. As overtime ticks down, they'll take the first here.
They weren't really able to get a fair fight since that first beginning, and as soon as that first fight trickles down, Doug's Noodles seem to just kind of trickle into each of those engagements, lose members very early on. They committed to that Tracer, which meant you're constantly playing one person away from your team. That means that you don't have enough real fallback onto your backline unless Trevsex is getting that same amount of urgency, putting that same amount of pressure onto Regen, and that Tracer just was not able to go for the pick that you want, right? The Zen was able to stay alive for so long, and it was only occasionally that we saw Immortality Field invested when the Tracer came calling.
Yeah, the Tracer didn't quite find enough value. Trev is going to swap onto it, but cool. Swaps onto a Tracer of their own. I suspect they're going to just be teleporting out of spawn here and then swap back. Yep, back onto the Tracer, and now we get to see the Genji come alive.
Now we get to see the full dive come in. Regen, Diva, Winston, and a nano boost to boot. If you're Doug's Noodles, Dewdrop is going to be on heavy duty right now. That flashbang might not be big enough for the entire team.
Absolutely not. And as the dive comes in, so does the anti-nade. Lands down on a 3 in the back line here. That is huge from CJ all the way from downtown. It's going to help that one connect. However, Regen haven't quite found the value they need, although with the May gone, that's exactly what they need. Just as I say it, such a critical piece of Dog Noodles' plan is already taken out.
Dog's Needles need to swap. That Lucio needs to be traded in for Brigitte. He's actually going to go off the Moira. I would much rather see a Moira, because a Moira has that survivability. She's got that fade ability. Anna is extremely vulnerable if you miss that sleep dart. Cool ABC is inching towards that pulse bomb, 74%. Evo's gone on to the Brigitte, Trevstack's on to the Torbjorn. Yes, it's a lot of deterrent, but that Tracer just needs to blink into your team and get one stick, and that's value.
I mean, you said you wanted swap bucks. These are them, but maybe not the ones you were looking for. Regen, they're going to look to take advantage of another huge anti-nade. Lands onto the Reinhardt. Dago dropping all the way down to half HP. A nade of their own, though, will pick him right back up and feeling nice and chipper. Now up on top of the Winston. Should be going down here. Lava falls. Regen slowly have to peel their way back to the point and try and find a pick. Try and find some sort of hole in Dog's Noodles' composition. They do manage to taking out both the supports. Oh, they've left open the right spot for Regen to slide on in and take this fight.
Cool ABC was able to get the stick. In amongst a Torbjorn, a McCree, and a Brigitte, was able to stick the off support. And it found value. It managed to take Success Mech out of the picture as well. And now, if you're Regen, you've got a Nano Blade. And Dog's Noodles, they don't have survivability. They might just have to pop Deadeye to try and keep the Genji off their backs because of Shield Bash. And the Shadow might not be able to do it.
It's gonna be a hard time here. So many ultimates facing down. Nano Blade in. He's looking for massive amounts of value, slashing and dashing all over the place. Willing to get one, a second on the board. Cool ABC picks up a third, and Chopper cleaning this fight right on up. Did somebody bring the McNuggets to this guy? He's got all the sauce.
Dog's Noodles, they didn't use that, did I? They didn't use the Shatter. They didn't try to shut the blade down. It sort of felt as if they just gave into it, so at least now they don't have to deal with that ultimate combination, right? They can come in with a Shadow, with a Deadeye, the instant follow-up, but not if you lose your off support. You need to have that protection there for your Reinhardt so he feels safe to drop his shield.
Yeah, losing your off tank like that, losing your D.Va is so critical. Still more ultimates on the board here for Regen. Chucking in a bomb, does manage to pick up Dewdrop. No CSAC either, no main support. This team is just falling apart right now. Regen have done a fantastic job of dismantling anything and everything that Dog's Noodles have tried to do.
That pick onto the D.Va was absolutely huge. Not only are you missing one of your members of your team, it's the final fight. You can't afford to give them the space to get that regroup properly going, so you have to move forward with 5 people. And now we're going to see, this is the Nano Blade, right? Look at all of the things that Dog's Noodles had access to if they wanted to shut that one down. If you solo shatter a Nano Blade in Genji, that's value. That's one ultimate for 2. But they keep a hold of them, and they keep a hold of them, and they don't really get to use them, right? That's the thought process behind it, and it's extremely frustrating because I've fallen into that trap myself when I'm playing with people in a coordinated group. You've got a Shadow, you've got a Deadeye. Deadeye is one of those where sometimes it uses the zoning ultimate, sometimes it picks up a straggler, maybe 2 if you're lucky. But if you have that Shatter and they're down on the ground, oh, it's the payday. Oh, it's the 4K or the 5K, the play of the game play. But the play of the game play was unfortunately not able to be set up until that point had ticked into 98%. And by then, it was too late.
Yeah, you have to find the ability to just use your ultimates. It may not feel like you have the advantage, but you have to be able to find value somewhere. And they weren't quite able to. And this is coming from somebody who, as you well know, Mux, will drop a solo shatter on anybody and anybody, regardless of whether or not they're using an ultimate. I'm pretty sure there's a middle ground somewhere in there where you just use it for nano blades or you just use it for primaling Winstons, and you're able to get a lot more value.
I mean, personally, I would have loved to see a Zarya come in place of that D.Va, because you were running the Reinhardt, so it would make sense to have the Zarya in, and you're worried about a Tracer coming in, a Genji coming in, just messing up your backline. Pulse Swarm can be negated by a really smart bubble. And you can have a lot of peel from the Zarya as well, because the D.Va, you normally send her into the team to put pressure on the front line, to pull resources away from everybody else, and as well as that to help out your tank in that frontline fight against the other main tank. But that wasn't really happening in that fight. Dog's Noodles were very hesitant, it seemed, to actually leap into these situations. And you have to meet the dive, otherwise the dive just stomps all over you.
Yeah, I mean, Regen have played the dive fantastically. They played the double shield just as well on Sanctum. Dogs Noodles, they have to find something to offer up. Usually, as we get into a series, I'll see some sort of a mirror match come out and then suggest that one team try and force them off the mirror match. But we've seen them off the mirror match. We saw them play Brawl into Dive, a matchup that you should be able to figure out in some way or another, and they still weren't able to figure it out against Regen. Dogs Jones, the only thing we haven't really seen from them is going to be a dive, but after seeing Regen play dive that well, do you think that even goes in their favor?
So yes and no. You can have a very successful dive in parts, but I feel like Doug's Noodles, if they want to actually start making some headway in this competition, if they're going to play dive, they can't be hesitant. And at the moment, they're very hesitant. They're very antsy about what they properly want to do. And if you have antsiness and you've got a Winston and a Diva that you're sending into the enemy time and time again, antsiness gets you killed. Antsiness lights up the kill feed with your corpses. And so I think what we can see, because we're headed off to Rialto next, Dogs Noodles, maybe they go for the hybrid dive, the sort of Frankenstein composition that we see coming out, where you've got something like a Winston to go into that front line to create a little bit of chaos, to buy you the space to keep that payload moving. You've got a Pharah up in the sky to set up a crossfire with a McCree or even a Widow. Hanzo as well now qualifies, now that Storm Arrows have been buffed from that 60 to 70 sweet spot of damage on Shield Break. He's back in, and Dragon Strike is still one of those where you can combine it with ultimates, you can send it in as something that instills the fear and acts as a sort of sheepdog to herd a team where they don't want to go and where you're just waiting with an ultimate to catch them out as they fall. And you can go for some support as well. Like, Moira doesn't work on Rialto, and I've tried to play her on Rialto to very little success. I'm sure you've seen her. But I feel like you need something that has that survivability, because Dark Noodles, we've seen that they've swapped. They tried to protect their main support with that Brigitte coming on through, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't enough in that match. I think a different map offers up a completely different look, right? A lot of these control points, they will go 100 to 0. A lot of it is about who takes it first, about who's able to roll the ultimate economy in their favor. And every single time that was Regen. However, now moving on to Escort, moving on to Rialto, like you mentioned, I think it gives a lot of different looks that Dog Noodles could be going for. You mentioned the Pharah Winston. I'm thinking things like even an Ashe comboed with a Torbjorn can be incredibly powerful on points like this and shutting down pushes.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's one thing that deters a Tracer from coming in, it's a stick of dynamite and a Torbjorn turret. You don't want to be caught anywhere near that if you're a Tracer, not even with that distance fall off being lopped off a couple of patches ago. And so I would love to see the Torbjorn. I would love to see the Ashe, but you can run that on the defense, not so much the attack, because, well, we laugh and we sort of giggle and smile when someone goes for the attack Torbjorn. It still doesn't quite work out, even in 2020.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a rough time. I think defensive Torbjorn, there's a couple of really nasty turret placements here.
Oh, you should know. You're the Torbjorn expert.
Yeah, I should know. I am the Torbjorn player. Like, there are so many really valuable defensive opportunities for Torbjorn turrets, especially locking down the courtyard. The walls towards the second point attacker's spawn are actually incredibly useful. You can place your turret completely out of LOS from the opposing spawn and use it to just lock down the courtyard. It shuts down any sort of flank. It shuts down anything in the sky that's going to be going above it. Meanwhile, the enemy team still doesn't have any LOS of it.
You should just start a Torbjorn tutorial, you know, like today's Doors Torbjorn tutorial, tip number 27. But no, Courtyard, it's funny that you mention it, because Courtyard is one of those just places that Rialto properly begins. Unless you've got an environmental composition where you're just focused on getting those picks into the river, like a Lucio and an Orisa, battle properly starts as soon as that payload rounds that first corner, because Courtyard, if you control Courtyard, you've locked up point A, and it's just all in your favor. You've got the line of sight all across the map. You've got that defensive positioning where the team really wants that natural cover to hide behind for when the Reinhardt shield breaks, but it's not going to be natural cover for the defending side this time around. We wanted to see dive. And we're going to see dive, but it's coming out of Regen, who feel confident enough that Dark Noodles had failed to deal with it the first time around. Like, they can want to go for the second.
It's going to be really tricky, though, right? This Winston and Zarya don't offer that much in the way of sustainability. They can be pushed off relatively easy. The second those bubbles are gone, this card is going to continue to take space. And that just puts a timer on them, right? They have to be going in on these supports eventually, but they really can't because such an enclosed space. You see, they're just going to sit up on this second floor and ensure that nothing can happen to them.
And the D.Va, meanwhile, is just pushing that payload, and the dive comes through, but instantly, Dogs Noodles all group up together and dive. Well, it wasn't a very well coordinated dive because you've got that Zarya on the main ground, away from the Winston, not able to lend the damage required to take the team out.
I mean, you put a little bit of doubt into my mind, and now Regen are putting more. This dive composition doesn't really have that much to offer up against Dogs Noodles right now, especially considering how well they played it. Moving up to that second floor was absolutely genius. It forced the Winston through a choke point they did not want to be on. And now you're facing down a really scary contest at the end point. Lava now searching for the supports, but that Ana is so far back. So hard to actually get on top of. They got the brawl with it. The Brigitte is going to be keeping him alive for the time being. Zapping all over the place. Dago dropping low, but this Nano Boost is keeping him alive so well. Point nearing the end. The Winston falls. Nano Blade might be enough to do it here. Finds one. Can he find the value for a second? Flashing and dashing all over the place. The Reinhardt finally falls. Can't find a third though as CJ goes down. Only the Brigitte and Genji alive on the point for the time being. Regen, they're not looking hot, but they do have a chance at a recontest here.
But Dogs Noodles, Zizak still alive in the back. There's no pressure on that main support. And so even if you manage to get the damage on the front line, you just got an Ana turning that into Ultra and already 51% to the next Nano Boost.
I mean, he's gotten so much value, but Regen, they've stabilized. They've gotten through this one.
That's a big sigh of relief, because if Akodoko had committed that shadow, that Nano Blade would have found absolutely nothing. Now, though, they've got a Graviton to go up against, and they're missing a McCree.
Yeah, Trev tries to use the down. I'm going to be shut down immediately. Facing down a Graviton Surge. The Shadow does come through. Only managed to catch one, so no follow-up there. Graviton connects onto two. No heat from the D.Va is going to mean free real estate here for Regen, pushing straight onto this point and taking down those tanks.
Trev stacks is onto the Widowmaker, so no more McCree, no more Flashbang, and what should be your counter to dive has just become your biggest vulnerability to it. Widows are very easily leapt upon, especially with cool ABC on this Genji. Has that blade. Call it if he wants it, Lava with the Primal as well. It's going to be very hard for Dogs Noodles to even move on to this payload. They're going to be relying on Dewdrop with that Tracer to try and get a stick on the Pulse Bomb, but even then you're just waiting around hoping that the Tracer doesn't get shield bashed before she can find value.
Don't go out there, don't go out there. You don't know what's coming for you. Lava's coming in with the Primal Rage! Looking for the environmental kills, knocking the supports around. Sleep will land on top of him, but just the damage is too much. Dewdrop falls. Cool ABC though traded out. No ability for this Nano Blade anymore. They'll chuck in self-destruct into the back line, lands inside of the Winston bubble. Means that nobody will be going down to that for the time being. Cool ABC though, it is a race against time as they try to get this Genji in just enough to get the Nano Blade off, and here he comes! Straight into the back line he goes. Cut stacks first to fall, a second down on a C-stack. No main support, but the C9 from Regen allows Dogs Noodles a free payday.
Dogs Noodles got away with murder on that one. Evo was 1v1ing Chopper away from the fight, away from the team with the ultimate that would have meant that blade found absolutely naught with that sound barrier. So Regen gonna be unlucky of that. Dude, though, carry that ultimate through for Dogs Noodles. So they've got it. They're going to have to hold on to it for a little bit longer because Ship is approaching that Graviton. And you don't really have anything to deal with it outside of that E.
Regen are getting very cocky up on this high ground, trying to push it. Dago, he's just gonna happily take him back home. Straight to the opposite end of the bridge. Find that kill, push the cart forward, and I really don't like that from Regen. You put your Tracer in on the backside, you're trying to play Brawl into a team that has a full set of ultimates available to fight you, and now you're at a serious disadvantage.
Yeah, now you're just trying to cycle up to that Nano Blade, but they're just gonna put in the blade dry. Gets the Lucio before he can beat!
I mean, Cool ABC's been charging these up at such a rapid pace. I can't even blame them. They're doing work right now on the Tracer Genji.
The fact that you managed to get the Lucio and Evo still held on to the sound barrier. It's the same sound barrier. And we've already had 2 Genji blades, and he has not committed it. Now you've got to hold it for this Graviton.
Oh, they're going to be using the Deadeye to start things off. Sox trying for this defense matrix, knows it's going to be coming, but they find 2! With the Deadeye off the bat, immediately eliminate those threats and pick off a massive fight with just 1 ultimate.
There's the vibe that I want to see from this Lucio. Evo goes for the boop, and it manages to pick up 1 from the side of Regen to help assist with that Deadeye, trying to get them away from that Reinhardt shield. Still holding onto the sound barrier, very reluctant to use it, but now he is going to have that Will of Steel. He can't put it in until the Graviton.
Self-destruct over, doesn't find anything. Soundberry used for the Graviton Surge. They will lose Cool ABC on the back end of it. Regen not in time. The shatters from Doggo have been massive. Not being able to follow up on, though. Again, here, Lava and Chip both going to be living a lot of that due to Magic 8 Ball on the Vegeta, and you see how effective it is at peeling off these dives. Sox tried so hard in that fight to take down CJ, but just the raw force of Brigitte keeping him off.
That's the second time I've seen Sox invest a Diva Bomb before Aggro Doggo puts the Shadow down. And Shadow Bomb combo is a devastating one if you don't have that if you don't have that shield there. And Lava, well, you can't hold your shield up for a Shatter if you're already down on the ground. Likewise for the self-destruct, but Dogs Noodles, they've got 24 seconds to build up something, anything that lets them move on to this payload. Trefsax is going to have a Deadeye, yes, but Cool APC is going to have a Blade, and we've seen this guy get so much value with that ultimate alone.
First kill on the Chopper is exactly what they need, though. They have the tools, are facing down yet another Blade here from Cool ABC, who has been massive with them. Nano or not, Chopper going to be coming in with the Pulse Bomb, but as these main tanks move in, that means it's time for Genji in the back line. CSAC doing a fantastic job peeling Genji away, though, using the anti-nade to deter him from doing much of anything. In the meantime, though, since the focus wasn't on your tank, he's going to go down because of the lack of healing.
That was no focus at all on the frontline fight. Everyone inside Dogs Noodles was doing what everyone does in the scenario when they hear a Genji ult. Panic! And if you're panicking as that time ticks down and you lose your seconds and it goes into overtime and you've got to have bodies continuously piling onto that payload, that's when the defending team finds value, because they had ultimates. They had so many ultimates that they banked up and that they could just throw at Dogs Noodles, who'd thrown all theirs away in the previous fight.
Yeah, the ultimate economy has been very, very back and forth, but I'm impressed that Dogs Noodles were able to take it, right? You play into the dive on the first point, and they took advantage of that perfectly, right? You ended up taking the point, and then you roll that into an ultimate advantage, and then you roll that into a Deadeye that wins you a fight in and of itself, and then you roll that into a bigger ultimate advantage. Yes, they threw it away in the one fight, and that's going to be unfortunate for them, but the biggest thing I want to point out here, there's some serious promise showing from Dogs Noodles.
Absolutely, but at the moment, it feels like they're playing a sort of individual star talent game. Right? Aggro Doggo and Sox, they're not moving as a unit as you want to see your tank lineup properly push forward as one. If you've got two ultimates that you can use to combine them. They're going to find a lot more value than a Diva Bomb being chucked out into a team on its own where everyone can just hide behind Lava's Rain Shield. If you're Evo and you're that Lucio, you need to stop going for the 1v1 against Chopper. That's not your job, especially if you've got the ultimate that can save your team. You need to start relying a little bit more on your DPS. You need to start investing your resources into the team so that the team can find value instead of the player on their own.
Now, this composition coming out from Dogs Noodles is really interesting. They are going full out brawl, running the May McCree. This means they want to get up close and personal, try and shut this down. Regen, though, they've opted straight into it. Chopper on the Widowmaker, though, is a serious threat. With so many players looming on that high ground, there's a lot of value to be had as well. Dogs Noodles have their McCree on the flank. Dewdrop is over off on the side bridge and needs to be very careful about how he moves back here. Will do so early, but a lot of cart presence gained here for Regen.
Yeah, but Dewdrop is doing a very good job of pressuring that payload, so it hasn't moved past this corner first. Does mean that you're one person behind and he has to win the duel against Chopper, otherwise Chopper is going to have free fire onto all that goes on before him.
I mean, Chopper's a real threat, but what this means more than anything is that there's not a McCree on the high ground to stop Regen from pushing forward. It's May versus May, and right when it comes down to it, Regen are going to have precedence because they have more space to work with. You can push them off of that balcony, and you can really take care of these threats just by taking up their space.
You needed that McCree to be there with the team. You need something that isn't really the May. There's a time and place for a May. It's when you want to stop the Death Ball composition. And Regen aren't playing traditional Death Ball. You need to have a Widow character!
Chopper, my God, give him a break for Pete's sake. A third kill found. Dewdrop goes into the drink here, and Chopper finds himself a third for the fight. What a fantastic Widowmaker play. Picking up a fifth even.
Chopper needs to be shut down. There is nothing that contests a Widow other than another Widow. And Trefsax is 10% away from a Blizzard, so you don't want to be swapping off now because this is the one ultimate that you should be able to stop this payload for. Right? But you don't have that follow-up. You don't have a Deadeye. You don't have a bomb. And you look at what Regen's got access to. They've got that bomb. They've got that Shadow. So as soon as Cool ABC drops that Blizzard, nothing is going to be able to save Dog Noodles' team unless Sox is able to eat it because Evo is too far from the sound barrier.
Eyeball Cool ABC here. He's trying to get a little risky with it. reaching around the backline. Your tanks are completely open. Where on earth are you going? You're going to lose your Reinhardt at this rate. Will get grounded. Great shatter from Lava. Puts down everybody and barely clutches out that fight.
And now the payload is moving. It's the final fight. You've still got a Blizzard in your pocket. Dogs Noodles, they have a little bit of potential in them. They need to get into this fight, though, Joe. They need to touch an Aggro Doggo. He's going to be alone at the moment. He needs to put that shatter in and right time for his team to get in.
The Deadeye or the Shatter has to be mastered here. They're pushing and they've got a Blizzard to do a few things with. However, great peel away from Regen. Just going to ignore that Deadeye. Again, they have a relatively even ultimate game here as they push in, but that bomb is going to be so critical. Chopper taken down by Dewdrop. Already a one-man advantage. Is going to be big. Blizzard peels a lot of members off the cart, but doesn't really find any kills. As Dog Noodles peels very, very effectively backwards. Takes down 2. He's going to follow that one up with a team fight win.
Oh, cool APC's Blizzard was almost cancelled by Dewdrop. That flashbang was ever so slightly out, but Dogs Noodles, they invested the Blizzard into that fight, and it means that they're going to be going into these next engagements with a Diva Bomb, a Nano Boost, and a Sound Barrier. And that might not be the win condition that you're really looking for, because Sound Barrier is going to keep you alive, sure, but it's only temporary. It doesn't have that shutdown potential that a Blizzard comes with it. Deadeye and Bomb you can both run away from. They need to buy the time to get either a Shadow or a Blizzard back, and Regen are just going to be waiting for that moment.
I mean, there's not exactly the tools on Regen's side to win a fight either right now, though. So if Dogs Noodles plays right, they could be looking at a win. Magic 8 Ball taken down by this self-destruct early, and that's exactly the value you need to start off by. Great anti-nade, though, onto Eva, onto Ago Doggo, force him back, and beautiful follow-up there by Cool ABC, finding the alternate fire and finding the frag there. Now is all about the stall for Dogs Noodles and trying to get back on.
Well, Dogs Noodles, they've got the Deadeye. They might not be able to put it in because the McCree goes down before he can pop Q!
Oh lord, this is not good. Evo has to use a sound barrier just for the stall. Ago Doggo comes in, good boot bunch, and will be buying space. Now it's Chopper's turn to chuck in a Deadeye Blizzard as well. This has got to be locked up here for Regen.
Dewdrop is just the only one with the ultimate, but he's not even going to get to see the payload. Regen taking it. But if you're Dogs Noodles, you did a valiant effort of keeping that payload. Remember how quickly they lost point A? They were able to hold on for point B for what I'm sure for them felt like eternity. Lava is going to be chucking a snowball at our faces as he picks up play of the game. There goes the shatter. There go Dogs Noodles' bodies all into the ground and back into the respawn room. I'm sure, as a Rhine main on EU ping, you can appreciate true art.
I'm familiar with these Rhine plays. I can't say how many of them I get myself. You mentioned the respawn room earlier. Very familiar with that. But outside of that, I really think that Regen played a great game. Dogs Noodles, though, I really want to hit on. That was infinitely better than the control point series that we saw. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. There are still some cracks in Dogs Noodles. Not matching a Widowmaker up to Chopper was one of those big ones, but it's because you weren't really expecting the Widow to be a problem, right? At the moment, Widows aren't the problem often in Overwatch. Instead, it's the attention that they pull away from the rest of their team, which sets other players up, like a Pharah, like an Ashe, to come home with the goods for the tank lineup to actually go in and not be instantly ripped to pieces when it comes to their health bars. Chopper was a monster because Dogs Noodles let him. The Mei was too busy up there with the rest of the team, couldn't wall the Widow's sight off, was focusing on the frontline fight rather than the backline fight. So Chopper was just playing a sort of 5D chess game. And all of Dogs Noodles, unfortunately, find themselves being just plucked off the board on point A. But as soon as we swapped, as soon as we saw that payload roll out of A and into B, that was when this team came alive. That was when we stopped seeing these little trip-ups, these mistakes, very small, sometimes very big at others, just start to fade away. And unfortunately, even though you had ultimates, even though you could have chained them, you had to throw in so many things because Regen had that amount of time because they'd been so quick to get through A that they could just play that really long game and pull all of these ultimates out. Dogs Noodles were in that corner where you have to put Diva Bomb in, you have to put Blizzard in, you have to put a Shatter in, otherwise you've lost the map. Regen can take a much calmer approach where they can say, well, we don't feel like putting this ultimate in because it doesn't feel like this is our fight to win. So we'll take your ultimates and then we'll say, thank you, please come again.
I mean, you mentioned things that Dog Noodles have to do. I'll tell you what they have to do. They have to take this map Regen have him up against the wall. It's now or never. The exponential increase of Dogs Noodles' ability is promising. We're heading on to King's Row here. They have to be able to show us something new, though. That last map was really, really close to the greatness that they need in order to take down this first seed, but it's just got to go that little bit further if they want to pull it off. And in recent time, there's been a couple of interesting strats played on Kings that we were talking about earlier. You want to run me through that?
Oh, yes. Sometimes you're just watching Overwatch and you fall in love with the game all over again. And I'm sure if anyone was watching the Overwatch League footage on Saturday, they're going to agree that Houston versus Gladiators Kings Row will go down in match history for a very long time, because the Gladiators got a little bit of their own medicine. They got bamboozled with a Symmetra Mei strategy, and I would love to see teams try to replicate it, because it is just one of those where you're stuck in that catch-22, right? So what we had a Mei wall coming through, which set the Sim up to get a teleporter onto the high ground. The Sim and the rest of the team move on through. The Mei goes back and changes into something like a Widowmaker, and you just take pot shots from that high ground legend. If you're Regen, if you've got a Widowmaker of Chopper's caliber that we got to see on Rialto, I think you're looking at that sniper's nest, and you're trying to keep your head very far away from it, or at least behind a Reinhardt shield, because that place where normally teams just go for a little bit of an early pick to try and slip things into their favor in the coming fight, that might be the site of a massacre in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, it could get scary here on King's Row, but you call it a bamboozle. I'm not even sure how much it is lack of counterplay from the opposing team, or like lack of understanding of what's going on. That high ground's very vulnerable. If you don't have multiple members set up there to deny the teleporter, there's not much shutting the play down. So it is a very, very strong way to attack the map, because if the enemy team does set up on that high ground, then you've just got a lot of free space through the choke. So it's a very hard play to actually deny from happening.
I mean, you can only really counter it if you're expecting it. And even then, you sort of have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Because King's Row Point A is only part of the map, right? It's a third. And if you're expecting a Symmetra teleporter strategy to come out, then you have to be prepared for it with a composition built around countering it, which means as soon as the Symmetra goes away, your composition goes away. And all of your ultimates get reset. Rather than the team who loses a Symmetra, you lose 6 ult bars. And that means you might be losing streak phase off the back of swapping up.
We're not seeing any Symmetra, though, here. It would be coming out from Dogs Noodles if it was going to be on the attack. Regen, of course, will get an opportunity to run it themselves, but why don't you take us through these compositions? Because they're pretty interesting.
So Regen is going for that high ground that we really wanted to see coming from these guys. Lava and Ship going to be there, but Lava is pretty far away from the rest of the pack. We'll have cool ABC to back them up when it comes to damage, and Magic Mabel going between the high ground and the low ground. But that might not be enough, because Dogs Noodles, they are going to be looking to take that high ground away from this team. They've got trap stacks on this Doomfist, Dewdrop on that Reaper. A lot of survivability if you get in close. These DPS are going to struggle when it comes to poke.
Yeah, getting through here, just making its point. It's going to be such a struggle. Look at this. Cool ABC as just being a pest on the side, making sure they can't go anywhere without actually taking any damage. Chucking in sticky bombs every 5 seconds, just making their life really, really annoying. See, already charged up 72%, shoot the duplicate. That can be huge. Dewdrop gets dropped down onto the low ground, which means that Chopper and Ship are going to be push up the high ground, but oh no, Ship, that's not the window. He goes out the wrong way. Adaptive circuits are online, though. Full ABC will just replicate over another tank for the time being, given how quickly they charge it. But you have to get the grab ton out just barely before they go down. The cast goes through, so much damage chucked in, but not that much to follow up. What a dynamite over top, though, from Chopper, dealing so much damage to Dogs Noodles. Now have to reset back in this room.
And they're all just forced up into the high ground, which means Regen get a shooting calorie. Cool APC 35% up to that next duplicate. Very vulnerable at the moment, but can just glide up into the air, and there's nothing Dogs Noodles can do. They don't have a hit scan.
They don't, but what they do have is the Doomfist dealing a lot of damage. Ship goes down again. Cool ABC and Chopper, though, are just putting in obscene amounts of damage right now, even more so than these brawl-based DPS that Dogs Noodles are offering up.
We talked about they didn't have a hit scan. That's the problem. Dogs Noodles, they've got that brawl. As soon as they're getting close, that's where they take precedence in the fight. But Cool ABC and Chopper, they don't care about this composition getting in close. You've got a coach gun. You've got an Echo who is based around mobility in the air and on the ground. So Dogs Noodles going to be swapping Dewdrop onto the McCree to try to deal with that, which means Trap Stacks is going to be going in on his lonesome, and already the Echo's gone.
That is a huge pick. The duplicate was online for them just about 94%. CJ's coming up on a Transcendence. The timing here has to be immaculate for Dogs to hold on either that, or we're just going to see more heads get taken off by Chopper. So much damage being put in on this Ashe.
Oh, Regen have played the composition and changed up their defending stance accordingly, because Dogs Noodles, they're playing a lot closer now, right? You've got G-Drop who's going to be going for the flanks, trying to get an individual pick. So Regen aren't playing spaced out like they were in the first beginnings of this round. They're much closer together. They know when Dogs Noodles comes to call, they'll have that firepower of the entire team behind them. They've got a Transcendence as well, so they're going to be there getting that AoE healing.
Well, AoE healing is one thing, surviving this brawl is another. Using the Great Flux is going to be exactly the way they want to start this fight off. Peel away that dive, peel away that brawl, and just let your Ashe, Zenyatta, Baptiste, Echo just go to town on them.
And Regen didn't even need to use Transcendence or Duplicate. There was just no pressure on that Zenyatta because Dogs Noodles, they've swapped off the Doomfist, which means there's nothing to go into the backline, there's nothing to annoy CJ to the point where he has to put ultimate in to stay alive, and it's meant you've got a Transcendence in what could be the final fight as Dogs Noodles comes in with nothing really to pull it out. No Blizzard, no bomb.
Absolutely nothing to deal with here. Oh, you've already lost 2 to the halt. The Amplification Matrix is going to be completely ending this one. 35 seconds on the clock. It's now or never for Dogs Noodles. This is the last map, their last chance at pulling this one out.
Yeah, if you're Regen, you've still got this Transcendence door. And Dogs Noodles still have not been able to pressure this Zenyatta down, which means it's going to be extremely hard for them to get any sort of presence on this point and stay there.
That's a huge pick down on a Chopper to start this fight off. Exactly what Dogs Noodles need. You've had every opportunity to pull this one out. Cool ABC in your backline though. Threatening the shatter, charges through. Will he pick up Aggo? Aggo does finish. Use of the Transcendence now out. ABC has that shatter online waiting for the right opportunity, trying to mind game Aggo out of this one, but can't do it. Does get blocked. Blizzard now out. Dogs Noodles are finally putting the round on the point, but Regen have disengaged beautifully here. Gonna allow them to have a couple of ticks, find a couple of kills, and now they can push their way back out with this double shield. This immovable object just continues to sit on top of this point and not let Dogs Noodles do anything as they look to clean up a map 3.
They need to keep touching. Felucia's the only one who can do it, but that's an amplification matrix, and it's the window to his soul. Oh my goodness, door. Regen, they had quite a map, and Dogs Noodles, they had a sort of breath of life in them in that last fight. The Blizzard comes through, the Shatter comes through. Aggo was able to block Cool ABC's duplicated Shatter as well, which should have been huge, but they just weren't able to connect that into kills because CJ still had that Transcendence up.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate bank was really, really strong there for Regen at the end. I've got to hand it to Dogs Noodles. I think that is almost as close as you can get to actually taking that fight away with the ultimate disadvantage. I think the Blizzard could have been thrown in a little bit more effectively, throw it into the back corner so that it does hit inside of Hotel, so that it also does force them out onto the point where you want to be fighting. But hindsight's 2020. It was a really good attempt there from Dogs Noodles, that final attack, but it wasn't quite enough. Now Regen, they've just got to clean up one more to take their first 3-0 sweep.
And Dogs Noodles, they can't afford to give up a single tick, which means they can't do what they were doing on attack. They can't swap up their composition, but Regen, well, it's not the Mesa matchup that we're seeing, but if they do go for this, then what a way to end this series. It is much point for these guys. Cool ABC on the Bastion. Do you think we're going to get to see the Symmetra Bastion top hat strategy come out? Because Dogs Noodles, if it does, they don't really have anything to deal with it. They don't have a Rhine Shield that can really stand up to a Bastion.
Are they doing it? Are they? Oh my God, they're doing the Sigma. Yeah,
they're coming out.
The plat strat has to work, or else they're going to be at a pretty significant disadvantage. Sox is ball playing directly beneath them. It's going to be really hard for this faction to actually get any sightlines on anything, given that it's all directly beneath him. They're all going to scramble for cover, teleport back through from Cool ABC. Back up he goes. Shield this way will take down Eva to start things off. Sox now all out of defense matrix, will be falling immediately in Regen. After that first pick, it was curtains for Dogs Noodles.
Dogs Noodles didn't have the Sigma. And because you're on the defense, you don't have the luxury of being able to swap your composition up to deal with your opponents. You had a Diva, and we saw that they properly went for them, tried to annoy that Bastion off their perch defense matrix as much as they possibly could, but defense matrix is only going to buy you so much time, and a Reinhardt shield is the exact same.
Yeah, they had no way of getting off the point. Playing underneath, of course. Yes, you have the sideline. Yes, the Bastion can't exactly see you, but you don't have anywhere to really go either while the other team just wails on you and throws a hail of bullets your way. Regen they saw Dogs Noodles continually get better and better and better, and then just smacked him down. It was all over, slurped him right on up, and some really promising stuff showing from them.
Yeah, but remember, it's a double elimination bracket. So we will be seeing Ducks Needles just falling down to the losers round, but they do have that second chance saloon. And the one thing that we both agreed on as the series progressed was that this was a team that got steadily better and better and better. And if that progresses and goes with them into the next series, then I have no doubt they're going to have a very strong chance at managing to beat their way back into the upper bracket because they had that flexibility. They had the swaps coming in on their attack. When they saw that the Echo was being a problem, we saw a McCree come in. When they saw that they needed to go for a little bit of a flank, the Doomfist stuck around. And when they saw that that wasn't quite working out, the May got put in. And you were able to build up to a Blizzard as well. So some teams, they struggle with swapping in at the right time. Sometimes they swap in a little bit too late, sort of that mentality of you go in, it's the final fight, and only then do you see your Roadhog swap onto Rosaria. But they swapped the May in, she was able to build up an ultimate, and if it had been any other team that would have won them that point, that would have allowed them to keep moving on to the payload, but Regen just such a good job of keeping hold of their ultimates to use them in the right moment.
I mean, there's a lot of notes there for Dogs Noodles, but they gain a lot there too. You play the number one seed, you have learned so much. We talk about how much they improve now. Just wait till they VOD review a match like that. There is so much for them to be gained, not just stuff that they were doing wrong, but stuff that Regen did that they can really pick up on. And it was those difference makers in the mirror matchup, like the brawl that we saw, that I think can really turn things around for Dogs Noodles in the losers bracket. Really promising stuff though from Regen and really great stuff all around today. But that's all we've got for you from the Solstice Showdown. I hate to see it go, but for now, I've been Dor, and I've been joining Moxie, and we'll catch you guys later.